Awesome. Okay.
All right, let's go live.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You are now live.
Perfect. Thank you. If we could take the slate down there, that's great. Though sadly we'll be replacing it with my face. So I'd like to call the meeting to order. Thank you, everyone, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Tony Mancini for coming today. As is our practice in these, and we're not showing the, we still have the slate up there, Simon. So we're going to do the audio and visual check for each of the members.
Just to clarify, this is a live broadcast of the audio and PowerPoint presentations during the meeting. We'll be keeping this slate up and
spaces. Very good. All right. So, but it is live broadcast, which is a nice step in the right direction. So we're going to go through and do an audio check with each of the councillors on the committee, starting with Becky Kent, Vice Chair from District 3.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Present and accounted for. Becky Kent.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. Councillor Mancini.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, colleagues, everyone watching around the world. It's good to be here from lovely Dartmouth.
It sure is. Councillor Stoddard.
Hi, alive and well. Kimberly. Sunshine.
Excellent. Councillor Russell.
Thank you, and good afternoon here from lovely Sackville, where it is a brisk, like minus a lot today. But looking forward to this.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor Russell. Deputy Mayor Outfit.
Hi, folks from Bedford Wentworth, and look forward to working with you. Beautiful day.
It's always beautiful in Bedford Wentworth. So thank you very much for that. So we'll move to an approval of the minutes of November 26, 2020. Would someone like to move those?
So moved, Councillor Russell.
Do we have a seconder?
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Mancini. So moved by Councillor Russell, seconded by Councillor Mancini. Is there any further discussion on the minutes of November 26th?
Looks good.
Seeing none, we can move to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We'll move to item 3, approval of the order of business and approval of additions and deletions. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We do have a request for the addition of item 15.1. This is on-demand private accessible transportation service contract. This will require a unanimous vote from all members of the standing committee.
Thank you. And is there one we need to take off? Is it 12.14?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, that's correct. Staff has requested the removal of item 12.14. This can be done by simple deletion, and I believe there's a staff member present to speak to that item if need be.
So my understanding, well, let's let staff explain. I believe it's just that some more clarity around the bylaw being presented at the same time as the proposal, but if we could have staff clarify why that's being removed, that'd be great.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Patricia Hughes, Manager Planning and Customer Engagement. That is the case. It does have to have accompanying information about the bylaw change, so our preference would be to take that back with all of the required information at once.
Okay, so Mr. Clerk, can we deal with the two of these at once if there's no objection from council or request for separation, or do we need two separate motions?
I believe we can deal with both at once as long as we do meet the requirement for unanimous consent for 15.1. That should be fine.
So first then, so that we don't accidentally not approve the agenda, first what we'll do is we'll have I'll ask for a motion to add 15.1 to the agenda and to remove 12.1.4 from the agenda, and we'll vote on that separately. So could someone make that motion, please?
Mr. Chair, I'm happy to make that motion to delete item number 12.1.4, 2021-22 Student Transit Pass Pilot Program, and add 15.1 on-demand private accessible transportation service contract to the agenda.
Second, Tim.
Moved by Councillor and Vice Chair Kent, seconded by Deputy Mayor. Is there any further discussion on that motion? And so we'll vote on the changes and then we'll vote to adopt the agenda as amended. So any further discussion of the changes? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor of the amendments to the agenda?
Aye.
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 That carries. Our agenda has been amended. Do the clerks have anything further, or do the members of the committee have anything they would like to see amended or changed? Seeing none, we can move to a vote on the amended, adopting the amended order of business. Is there a motion? Could I have a motion to accept the amended order of business?
So
Moved by
moved.
Councillor Kent, seconded by
Thanks.
Mancini, let's say. Motion has been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Thank you. There's no business arising from the minutes, so the next item is call for declaration of conflict of interests. Are there any conflicts of interest today? Seeing none, we'll move to item 6, motion of reconsideration. There is none. Motion of rescission, there is none. Consideration of deferred business, none. Notice of tabled matters, none. Brings us to correspondence, petition, and delegations. Item 10, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There have been several pieces of correspondence. They have been distributed to members of the Standing Committee.
Thank you. Are there any petitions today, committee? Hearing none, there are no presentations scheduled for today. This brings us to 11.1 under information items brought forward, William Porter Connector Road Crosswalk. With the indulgence of the committee, I'm going to go to David Hensby, who is not a member of the committee, but the member of the committee who brought this forward was prior to the election, and he's no longer here, Councillor Cleary. So with the indulgence of the committee, I call on Councillor Hensby.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Councillor Cleary is still with us, but not on this committee anymore. And it was brought forward on your November meeting, and you didn't have it brought forward for your December, but your December meeting got canceled on the light agenda. So that's why I had to dig it up and find it and bring it forward here today. This matter is a request I put in some time ago, but William Porter Connector Road. It's exit 20 off of Highway 107 Porter's Lake. This area is right across the street from Heaven's Crosswalk, would connect Sandy Point Road to the infamous Sandy Point property we're trying to get for a community park area. So this also adds Sandy Point to Inspiration Drive, which is to the Porter's Lake Elementary School, as well as our Park and Ride terminal that is there at exit 20. And it also connects the Trans-Canada Trail. We have the Blueberry Run that comes up across the highway. And when we just put in just 2 years ago or a year and a half ago now, enormous amount of money into broadening the overpass at exit 20 to have an active transportation corridor there. So we now have 2 crosswalks, an expanded sidewalk, and a pathway that goes down the right-of-way of the highway down to meet the Blueberry Run Trail, and it also goes over and meets with the Park and Ride terminal site and the Greenway pathway in front of the school. So it would be great to have this crosswalk there across the William Porter Connector Road to connect that area, because the street across the area does not have school bus services. So the children in that area have to cross this busy streetway to get to school. And also in the summertime, there's quite a bit of traffic coming from the trail going to the Sandy Point Beach down there. So a crosswalk would be critically needed in this area. The only question is in regards to the province's reluctancy is I think they're going overboard on the design requirements. I think a simple painted line, a couple signs, and maybe some crosswalk flags is all that's really necessary. I don't think we need to have flashing, blinking lights and everything else like that on this particular road, but if we want to put in $70,000 to do that, so be it. But I think we can find a more reasonable arrangement, and hoping that we can have this go forward for our municipal staff to discuss further with the province in regards to what could be acceptable or not.
So what would you like to have someone make a motion to do at this point?
Well, you could have it referred back to council and for further debate, and or is Brad on the line? Is Brad with us today? He can probably give us some staff input in regards to how this should be handled or could be handled, or is Tasso on the line? I don't know.
Are there any staff who could speak to this item?
Yes. 1 second. We're having some problems here connecting to the meeting. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, it's Brad Anguish, Executive Director, Transportation Public Works. And Tasso can correct me if I'm wrong. Essentially, where staff has landed as a result of this report, for those that haven't had a chance to read it, essentially, as the councillors pointed out, the province has required a specific crosswalk treatment, which is a pedestrian half signal, and a crossing guard would be required. So there's two things that have to happen here. The estimated cost for the half signal crosswalk is about $70,000, as the councillors pointed out. And of course, there would have to be funding of a crossing guard. So that is the current requirements. I'm not aware of any ability to, we have pushed back on the province on this one. We do find it a bit over the top, but it is consistent. They are consistent in their decision here. This is what we see elsewhere. The other piece that's worthy to mention is this is an 80-kilometer-an-hour zone, which, as you know from police laying tickets here, two things have to happen. One, you basically have to be well above the speed limits, which putting the speeds up to 90 kilometers an hour, and based on crosswalk or school crossing regulations in this province, the children have to be present. So it does create a very concerning situation where you have 90-kilometer-an-hour vehicles and children. So obviously, staff has reviewed the file. The first thing we asked for from the province was, which we feel still is the easiest thing for them to do, is basically knock the speed limit down on the connector road. So that, because that is the #1 way to reduce injury in that area. Second thing is, as you can see in the report, staff did review the crosswalk. As you can see, it's $70,000 for the half signal, but also in terms of reviewing it against HRP criteria for crosswalk guards, it doesn't meet the threshold. So that leaves us in a situation where we really don't have the ability to do what the province is asking us. So there's a limited approach here. I'll just pause and see if I've missed anything that Tasso wants to bring to light.
Yeah, Brett, it's Tasso Kutralakis, Manager of Traffic Management, and apologies, I'm having some intermittent internet connections today, so I apologize in advance if I cut out. Yeah, that's it in a nutshell. So given that this area is under the jurisdiction of the NSTIR, they're the ones that determine whether a crosswalk is required. One of the things that is required in those areas, even before they review a location, that we as HRM have to make a commitment to pay for the installation and ongoing maintenance of crosswalks if they determine a crosswalk is warranted, which we did. And during the lead up of the request, it's clear from the community what they desire is a pedestrian crosswalk to make those connections, as alluded to by Councillor Hensby, for all hours of the day, and not necessarily one just specific for school crossings. And so that request was made through the province. They did a couple of studies. They were very minimal ped crossings during those times they studied, and therefore they came back and said a crosswalk is not warranted. With respect to the other avenue is, because the subject locations also is within the school zone, there's also the ability for the municipality to request a school crosswalk. However, that is tied to the fact that there has to be a guarantee from the municipality that a crossing guard would be provided. And given the speed of this location in max 80, which here in HRM in the urban suburban areas we don't have max 80s, but in that situation, if that existed within the urban area, I would generally would recommend the same treatment they're recommending, meaning a half signal and a high speed facility from a safety perspective. But in this particular case, we did reach out to our colleagues in police, and there were some guidelines set through the police commission board, whereby there's certain criteria that have to be met even before a cross guard would be deployed. And aside from the fact that it's related to elementary school, all the other criteria that they listed, it does not meet the criteria for a crossing guard.
Thank you for that, staff. Do you have any thoughts, or may I ask if anybody else on council has any, or committee has any interest in speaking to this?
Well, Mr. Chairman, what I'm hoping that we can probably make another formal request back to the province in regards to can they lessen their expectation or their what I call design overkill. I think like I said, a simple crosswalk with proper signage and flags for more visibility should be more than enough.
Well, no one else has added in the chat if they want to speak. For some reason, my participants window, when it opens, distorts everything and I can't actually see. So please use the chat if you'd like to speak, and that'd be the best way to do it. My suggestion, Councillor Kent, let's go to you first and then I'll tell you what I think. Go ahead, Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, David, when you first raised it here a few minutes ago, you spoke to the option of taking it to regional council. Wondering, what do you think that could be achieved there that potentially may not be able to be here? I'm just wondering, I certainly am behind you on this. Anytime we're talking about situations that include a lot of that, it's a complicated area, and safety around kids, that I'm all for putting our voice on something that is beneficial in the end. I think a lot of times our crosswalks, no disrespect to all the great work that staff are doing, but often there's unique scenarios and insight that only often the community and councillors can provide because they're experiencing it more regularly. So again, what would you think that taking it to council could achieve that couldn't here, just to help me understand the process that might be useful to you?
Well, my understanding is it was originally my request to council. It got referred to staff, and it goes back through the channels, back to the Transportation Standing Committee. And the question is, how does it get back to council? There has to be either a referral without recommendation or a recommendation from council, from the Transportation Standing Committee, for it to get back to regional council. What I'm hoping at that time is that we could just make another formal request to the province to consider an alternative crosswalk arrangement.
Okay, so thank you. I'll put a motion on the floor, but I'd like to hear from you, Mr. Chair.
Well, so my thought is that we should make a recommendation to regional council, and that recommendation should be to write a letter to the province that does, as David said, that they should look at alternative crossing. I mean, to me, I'd like to, staff can comment after I'm done, suggesting a path forward here. But it seems to me that on this kind of location, would something more like the rapid flashing beacons that we've been using be appropriate, or is that not appropriate because it's a little bit too wide? Looking on Google Maps, it looks like maybe there's a turning lane in there that perhaps would go against that. But my thought is that we use the language that David said, but I think that it should be tied into and other similar rural locations. Because this is the same thing we're hearing in East Preston, it's the same thing we're hearing in Hubbards, right? Where we've got a highway going through at great speed, and then there's a great reluctance to make those connections, and you're just not going to get high pedestrian volumes until you make it safe, right? Like it's the rural version of people not crossing Barrington Street to get to the bus stop on the other side by the shipyard. So to me, it should be the broader thing. This is an example of a problem we are having. We want you to address, and it should, and we should address it to the area MLA as well. It should be CC.
Totally correct. I only have 4 crosswalks in my district. 1 in Muscatava Harbor and 3 in Sheet Harbor. They're also on Highway number 7, but speed limit through those zones is 50 kilometers. So it's easy to have the thresholds and with the added with the crosswalk flags, the visibility, the signage. It's great that people can actually see where they're at and respect them more. But this is a unique situation on the William Porter Connector Road, an 80 kilometer zone. I totally agree with Mr. Anguish's request for we should try and get the speed limit lower. That's probably could be part of the letter back to the province. But we spent $700,000 plus to put that AT infrastructure on exit 20, and that includes 2 crosswalks off the eastern ramps that come on and off the off that interchange. So if we can do a crosswalk for those particular spots, this is only a mere couple hundred meters away, and have a crosswalk across the same street.
Could we hear from staff about whether or not what kind of less intensive crossings could be considered here, and then we can go to Tim. And I'm listening to what you're all saying, trying to see if I can recommend a motion. But could we hear from staff, maybe Tasso, about are we asking for the impossible if we say we don't want the overhead light? What are the other options?
Mr. Chair, Tasso Kutrilakis, Manager Traffic. Again, what I said earlier, if in fact this location existed within our area of jurisdiction, from a road safety perspective, I would be recommending a pedestrian half signal in an 80 km/h zone.
Can you
just from a road safety perspective, I would be recommending a pedestrian half signal.
It's to Becky, to Councillor Kent's question, that's where you full red light, like on Beach and Quinpool.
Yeah,
So you're picking up.
Sorry, wait, you broke up. You broke up. Can you repeat that?
A red light on Beach and Quinpool. You press and you get a red light.
Or those of you in the Dartmouth area, similar to the one at Nantucket Avenue by the transit terminal.
So you get. Okay.
Now, what if the speed limit was, if they did agree to lower the speed limit, what type of standard would be required then? Say they went from 80 to a 60 km zone.
Well, that could be a potential for a lower level of treatment. Say, for example, an overhead crosswalk light, RA5, which in their area the potential could be cheaper, but as a minimum, I would suggest that it would be an RA5, the overhead crosswalk lights with the flashing amber beacons. That would be a minimum in that type of scenario.
At a 60 km zone.
Right. I mean, again, it could also be, again, a rectangular rapid flashing beacon, but the challenge is even just by lowering the speed limit, it does not necessarily change the operating speed of the roadway. Okay. So that would lead to potential for increased enforcement to try to get those operating speeds down. So I can't speak to whether or not they would look at that, whether it's just strictly posted speed limit or operating speed. But it definitely, given the location and given that's a connector road, it lends itself to higher speeds. From my perspective, I would be recommending a higher level of a crosswalk treatment, not just your basic marked crosswalk at that location.
Okay, well, we'll go, while we mull that over, let's go to Deputy Mayor out there.
Thanks, and obviously we all support David's situation here in the spirit of what he's trying to do. I guess just from a very practical approach, what are we hoping to accomplish here? We're hoping to accomplish a letter to go to TIR with some, to reconsider, I guess, and to make some suggestions. So my question, I guess, would be to David and to Tasso, do you want this letter to come from this committee, which You want a letter to come from the mayor. If that's the case, it would have to go to the regional council. Or is this something that Tasso can be asked to write to his colleague and make some suggestions? So I guess whether we need to send this to regional council or not, or what motion will look like, depends on what the objective is.
Well, for my part as chair, the rules are clear now that that a letter to the government has to come from council. So the motion would be something like Transportation Standing Committee recommend regional council requests the mayor write a letter to TIR requesting whatever. All right.
Well, then that's what I needed to understand. We don't need to debate this necessarily again at council. We need their blessing for the mayor to send the letter. So I'm happy to support that motion. And it will help David, and maybe Tasso could reach out to his colleagues sort of informally and have this discussion as well. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you to the solicitor. I see your note that we'd have to waive notice of motion to make a motion at this time, and I'll keep that in mind as we try and get some kind of resolution. We'll go to Councillor Mancini for comment.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Look, I support the motion, the intent of the motion. My question really is, or comment is, here's another letter. Are letters of this nature, where it leads to transportation related or safety issue, responded any differently than all the other 21 letters that we send to the province? I mean, our hands are tied. There's not much we can do, and so, you know, Councillor Hensby's throwing the helmet up. Hopefully, something will stick. But I mean, what's the reality of them changing anything, their decision when we send this to the province? So I don't know if that's a question or just a comment. It's a frustration. I support the motion that came forward today, but you know, once again, here we are, and later on we're going to talk about bed buttons. This is big letters that we're sending and too many of them. But anyhow, just my 2 cents worth, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Mancini. So how about this for a way forward? How about we have a motion to refer this to regional council, as Councillor Hensby suggested might be an option, and then that gives us a couple of weeks for David and I to work on wording, because, you know, we want to write a letter about what and how detailed do we want to be, and I think that's going to take a little bit of work, and we should probably talk to staff about that. So is that I guess to Councillor Hensby, would that be a satisfactory motion? We'll just refer it forward, and you and I can work on a motion for council floor.
I appreciate that.
All right, so I'll go back to Councillor Kent, who was so generously trying to actually move something forward earlier. Councillor Kent, would you care to make a motion to refer this to regional council?
Yeah, and I'd appreciate the clerk's wording if that's helpful. Oh, they did it. Awesome. That's
oh, actually,
I'd like to move. Gosh, you're great. That's great. So,
well, we can just move that then. If that's satisfactory to David, we could move the motion that's currently in chat. I'll give everybody a second to read it.
Not on chat. Let me see if you can find it here. My other question to Tasso and to Brad is, with Inspiration Drive and Sandy Point Lane there, Sandy Point Drive, is this theoretically not an intersection already? So theoretically, an unmarked crosswalk by theory?
Mr. Chair, through to the councillor, yes, that is correct. Any intersection, the definition of crosswalk in the Motor Vehicle Act is any crosswalk, whether any intersection, whether a crosswalk is marked or unmarked. So yes. So if it's an intersecting street there, yes, there is a crosswalk there already, technically speaking.
But not marked.
That's right.
Yes. Okay.
So does that motion that clerk put in the chat suffice?
Are we saying it? Everybody's breaking up.
Sorry, we lost you there, Becky. You might be muted. Let me see if I can tell. Yeah, you muted.
Yeah. So are we getting it right in the text that says the consideration of an alternative crossing options for a crossing at a crosswalk location? It's a lot of crossing in there. Have we caught it all there? Like too many crossings.
Alternative crossing options at the crosswalk location on William Porter Connector Road. Okay. And we've noticed a motion. Is that sufficient? Just cut out the middle crossing.
Take out that middle crossing, I think. As long as we're not changing the essence of what they're getting at.
So forever hold your peace, moved by Becky Kent, seconded by?
Mr. Chair, can I speak to it?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, absolutely. I see Brad and Paul would like to speak, so we'll go to Councillor Russell first before we put that on the floor. Councillor Russell.
Thank you very much. Part of the consideration for the letter that would be going, or the changes that were being discussed, was a reduction of the speed limit, and this letter does not address that. This simply requests a crosswalk or crossing options, and I'm wondering if the letter should be expanded in that way so that it includes some mention of the speed reduction.
All right, we'll go to Brad and then we'll come back to, and we're going to hammer this down right now. We'll put in the speed options before we actually have the motion on the floor. Executive Director Anguish.
Yes, Mr. Chair, in reviewing the motion that's proposed before you, I'm just a little concerned. I was more comfortable with the idea that referring it to regional council and working on a motion in the meantime, and I don't know if that's doable. The primary reason for that, and I do agree, by the way, we should work the speed in there as well. I am a little concerned that, you know, in listening to Toss on this, we got to be careful not to ask for something that of the province that we wouldn't demand of ourselves. And so, in terms of staff, you've heard from the traffic authority in the position that of a high-speed crosswalk like this, you know, he's not suggesting that the treatment is overkill. In fact, it would be what he would recommend. So I'm just concerned of writing the province asking for a standard lesser than we might invoke upon ourselves. That I am concerned about that aspect of it, and so the idea of working on a motion between now and council, I think, would be a better approach.
Thank you. This is the exact example of why meetings are better in person, because we would have had a motion written or had this figured out before we started. What are you going to do? So let's go back to Councillor Kent. You want to just refer this to council? We'll work out the motion with staff between now and that meeting. Motion to refer.
I'll move to refer this item back to council.
Move.
You need to waive the motion first. Leave her notice.
No, not for a referral, I don't believe. Clerk, am I correct in that?
Just a moment. Sorry, my
correct. Thank you.
audio
Colin
is having a little bit of difficulty. Why don't I? Yes.
Colin says
Yes,
correct.
that's
We're good.
correct.
Moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by.
I have a question first.
Do you want to second it so that we can speak to it? Because we got to get it on the floor.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Councillor Mancini. We'll go to Councillor Mancini for a question.
So if I go back to the Councillor Hensby on this again, and when he described his concerns, I missed it. So why is it an issue that he feels the dressing is overkill? It's because the price tag is so high, then the province will invest the money. I missed that part. So can that be explained to me? Why is it overkill?
One last time to Councillor Hensby on the proposed motion. Councillor Hensby.
I think it's a design overkill by the province, but it would be at the cost of the municipality, because any crosswalks put on provincial roadways would have to be put in by the municipality and subsidized and supported by the municipality.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. That's why it's a good idea to refer to regional council so we can have the discussion further and some time to get our heads around. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mancini. Is there anyone further who'd like to speak to the motion to refer this information item for debate at regional council?
Question.
Question's been called. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Just so everybody knows, that I saw Tony put his hand up. I'll ask for you to say verbally, because I've got the agenda on one side of the screen and I've got Teams minimized, so I could only see Tony. If anybody else held up their hands, I wouldn't see it. All right, so that passes. Thank you all very much.
Thank you for your time today, committee.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hensby, for consuming the first hour of the meeting. Moving on to 12.1.1, proposed 2021 Transportation Standing Committee meeting schedule. Would someone like to move this motion?
I'll do that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Mancini.
Transportation Standing Committee approved the proposed 2021 meeting schedule as outlined in attachment 1 of the staff report dated December 3rd, 2020. So moved.
Moved by Councillor Mancini. Is there a seconder?
Second, Tim.
Seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Any further discussion on the agenda as proposed or on the schedule?
Staff putting my birthday March 12th, so I don't have to come to the Transportation Committee on that day. But thank you.
Excellent. Anything further? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. I'd ask you all to say yay or nay. All those in favor?
Yay.
Yay.
Yay or nay? Very funny. Is anybody against this? No, it passes. Oh, we have fun. 12.1.2, Q2 Halifax Transit KPI presentation.
Hello, good afternoon. Patricia Hughes, Manager of Planning and Customer Engagement. And I will bring the presentation up here. Okay, so this is the Q2 presentation. So just a reminder, this would be for the months of July, August, and September. So the data includes the summer months as well as September, which is typically the highest ridership time of the year. And if you may recall, that was also the period of time where we did return to full service. We did start resuming fares, and as well we did have periods during Q1 where we didn't have any data, but we did have data for this whole quarter. Attachments to the report contain a lot of data actually, but the presentation focuses on the priority outcomes, so I'll just go through those a bit. The first one being a safe and accessible transportation network. So there's 4 deliverables there, all still in progress. I'd also just like to flag, I typically come with these quarterly updates every 3 months, but because of the election in October, I came in late November, so it's actually been less than 2 months since I was here, which included the holidays. So some of the updates will be familiar because things do take a bit of time, so it hasn't been very long since I've been here. The technology program, so it's not public facing really, but the software, the fixed route planning, scheduling, and operations software, the team has been really busy with system testing, training sessions, moving along. The RFP for the mobile app is essentially drafted. We are expecting that to go out on the street in the next week or so actually, so we'll see movement on that one really soon. And as well, work is still ongoing on the MDTs for the Access Plus vehicles, which we spoke a little bit about last time. Second transportation priority outcome area is interconnected and strategic growth. The first one, transit priority measures, is complete for 2021 because the construction season is over. So just to dig into that a little bit more, phase 1 of Roby and Young finished at the end of the construction season, and phase 1 of Bears Road finished, and there will be more work on Bears Road next year, obviously. The other project to highlight is the West Bedford Park and Ride. So we have a design now. We've talked to some of the neighbors, and we have been doing stakeholder engagement. Council may recall that part of that capital budget was in the advanced tender list. So the intent is to go out with a procurement to get some of the grading work done in the short term, and then construction in the spring once the final capital budget's approved will be tendered. So that will be built this year, targeting up and running by November, so the end of the construction season. And just for everyone's information, that is a park and ride. There will be a platform with 4 bus bays and some shelters. So when we talk about new facilities, sometimes there's an assumption that that includes a building, but that is not a heated terminal building in any way, but it is shelters and it is a platform, and the focus being on the park and ride aspect, about 350 parking spaces. We're also working very hard on the Raggett Lake Transit Center expansion, working through design work with that with our partners from Community and Facility Design, and we have a tender just about ready to go. Again, should hit the streets in the next few weeks for the detailed design of that project. One of our deliverables was also the related to sustainable fleet. So the recruitment process for the sustainable fleet analysis is well underway, hoping to have an announcement on that soon. And one of the short-term goals will be actually we're looking into possibilities of bringing a single bus in just for a short time to test it. So we will be very excited if we can make that happen in the short term. The third outcome area, a well-maintained transportation network. Woodside Ferry Terminal. So no surprise, continuing to be under construction. It's a major project. Going well. The first phase, which was replacing the elevators, happened. So we had one smaller old elevator, which we now have two larger brand new elevators, which is great. Well into phase 2 now, and I think some of the impacted councillors may have had an email about this already, but the escalators are being replaced now, so those have been taken out, encouraging people to use the elevators if they can, and I'd also note the stairs will be replaced shortly, so there'll be temporary new stairs put in there during the construction. So those old escalators that I believe may be older than myself and parts aren't available for anymore, they have to be replaced, so there'll be downtime while they're getting swapped out. So into some highlights on the performance measures. Obviously, ridership is down. In Q2, we were down about 50%. We saw the increase in COVID cases after that, but right now we're still, I can share that we're still sitting at about 50% today for the network. On-time performance has increased significantly because there's less traffic, less passengers. It's not the right reason for it to increase. Fuel was down 2 cents lower than budgeted. Mean distance between failures was improved, so that's a good metric in terms of bus breakdowns and whatnot. The average number of buses unable to complete their service because of mechanical issues was 5, with the peak being 16, and maintenance costs were $1.29 a kilometer, which is 6 cents higher than we budgeted. So I believe last quarter it was lower, so there's just fluctuations within maintenance team. And that's all I have for my presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hughes. Are there any questions from the committee? I see Councillor Out there giving us a thumbs up. I think that's all we've got.
Sorry, Mancini's got a question.
Go ahead, Tony.
Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Chair. Patricia, thank you very much. Say that the escalators are older than you, so they're around, what, 27 years old, something like that? Patricia, my question is, thank you for the KPIs, and you're right, we just discussed this less than 2 months ago, but these are indirectly related to your KPIs. And with regard to prior to when COVID hit us, we were going to make numerous route changes, specifically in my area, Waverley Road, Route 55, and that was all delayed because of COVID. Where are those changes, including Route 55 and any other changes there? They being scheduled again? Where does that stand?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So last year we had an annual service plan ready. Just thinking back, I'm not sure that council ever saw that, or they might have seen an early draft. So a lot of the things that we had hoped to do last year, we're bringing forward into this year's annual service plan. And so you will see that as part of the director's presentation on the budget and business plan. The annual service plan will be distributed to councillors. I guess as a bit of a sneak peek, we are going to try to make up a bit for last time and have a really aggressive year. And the other thing that I guess wasn't mentioned was that Councillor Mancini, to you through the chair, we had talked about doing some engagement with some folks in Burnside as well. So that was deferred because of COVID. So the Burnside routes we don't anticipate changing this year because we still plan on getting out and talking to people as soon as we're able to.
So they were to be changed based on public consultation, because it didn't happen. The public consultation, we're going to do that first and delay those changes for about a year potentially. Okay. Thank you for that information. And the second question, if I may, Mr. Chair. Again, in my area, we have a proposed large development, Port Wallace development, which is quite large. I know that staff have been engaged with transit on this. I mean, this development, for those listening, is size of Truro, 10,000 people could be residing in this brand new development. And so, where are we with conversations about when this development starts to begin, if approved and it begins, that transit desire by the community and myself and many others is that transit's part of it right off the bat. They're creating that transit corridor as soon as they build. So when people move in, they know the transit exists there already. So we're avoiding multiple cars like you see in, Councillor Outhead's area where people have 2, 3, 4 cars. We try to avoid that. So do you know where that may lie? Any of those conversations, Patricia?
Yes, and I think we've certainly been having conversations about it for years, and I think that the councillor's correct that it's good to get in there early, and I feel like we've had some success doing that more in the West Bedford areas in recent years. But I'd say the conversations are ongoing. We're certainly actively engaged. I don't believe that I'm aware of any start dates yet, but we will be staying on top of it to make sure we're tracking any kind of start dates and construction phasing and anticipated build timelines, which of course are all very tentative until it happens, but we'll be staying close to it for sure.
No, glad to hear that, Patricia. And you're right, there is no start date. There's no formal application made just yet, but hopefully coming soon. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mancini. We'll go to Councillor Russell.
Thank you very much. One of my main interests is in making sure that the buses are on time. If we have buses that are on time, arriving and departing when they're supposed to, people's confidence in the system will grow. And same thing if we have buses that have the capacity to hold the people. And one of the curious things about COVID-19 is it makes everything or almost everything worse. There are some things that it can actually make better. In this case, it has taught many industries, in one case, it has taught many industries that people can work from home. In this case, it gives us a view of what the on-time performance could be if ridership was significantly reduced. It's an interesting experiment that I hope we don't get to repeat. But what it shows, the third bullet from your last slide, it was system-wide on-time performance was 86%, an improvement of 13% from last year. Do we have a target of what you hope to see the on-time performance be over the next number of years? And do we have a path to get there?
Thank you for the question, Councillor. And so we don't have a specific target. We do know that industry-wide 80 to 80% is usually the target. I think it depends on the conditions, and so the interesting thing and something we've been tracking really closely is that some of these routes may have been put in place with their existing schedules 30 years ago. So as we've been implementing the Moving Forward Together plan, for example in Sackville in November 2019, that would have been based on all new running time data, whereas there's sections of the municipality where the routes haven't been touched in a long time. Those routes have new data, but we have been realizing that even as we implement, that gives us even better data, because that's then the way those routes are connected at those times of day and whatnot. So we have gone back through for example, the Clayton Park routes that were implemented the following year. We did a lot of tweaks to the schedule adherence. So as we get the data, we're getting better and better. So our approach has been, as we're implementing the MFTP, use the best, most recent data we can, and then monitor it closely and tweak, because that's our opportunity to fix. A route that we haven't gone into that neighborhood yet with the service changes, to try to adjust running times in the absence of, it makes sense to pair that with when we're doing the big schedule changes. So I think once we get through the MFTP implementation, we'll have a lot better sense of where we are. We've definitely seen the improvements on those routes where the MFTP has happened. For example, the old Route 20 versus the new Route 9, it's much, much better. And I would say even in the absence of a target, 80 to 85% is good, but the number doesn't tell the whole story. If you were on time 85% of the time, that might mean you're getting there early and the bus is sitting idling, waiting 4 minutes at a time point, so that those one-off situations are covered by it. So we also look into the numbers a bit, and there are instances with express routes and whatnot, or certain bus stop locations that they're a time point, it shows up in the data, but we wouldn't ask people to hold there. So there's a bit of that in the data too. So definitely more work to be done there.
Okay, and are you differentiating in the data that you're looking at internally? On time means they show up either 1 minute late or 3 minutes early, if I'm not mistaken. Sorry, the other way around, 1 minute early or 3 minutes late. Are you differentiating in the data that you're looking at the difference between someone being early and someone being late? So 5% of buses leave their stop early and 95% of just the ones that are early or late show up late.
Yes, absolutely. And, you know, we do look through the data, especially the early data, because there's not often good reasons for buses to be leaving early. And we do find that most of the data that shows early departures is for a very good reason. You know, the bus stop is blocked, so the bus pulls ahead 30 feet. And that triggers that it's left the time point, but it's still there. So we look for spikes and we look for routes that early is happening and it shouldn't be, and we dig in to see what's happening. So there's not a standard per se for leaving early. It should be almost no instances, with the exception of just, you know, logistical things that are showing up that are really just data cleaning.
Right. Okay. The other thing.
Councillor Russell, we're at 5 minutes. I'm going to have to ask you to come back.
Turnabout is fair play. Absolutely.
You'd like it.
That feel good? That feel good, doesn't it?
Great. So we'll go to Deputy Mayor Outfit, please.
We got revenge for Paul doing to us all through the budget meetings, you see.
Yes.
There we go. So listen, just 3 points very quickly, and thank you, Patricia. First of all, we're back to about 50% when we were down as low as 80 or 90% reductions, I believe, during the lockdown in the spring. So a little cause for optimism there that we're moving our way up. I want to strongly support Tony's comments regarding Port Wallace. There's a lot of things we've done right in West Bedford. It's a wonderful place, but getting transit in there sooner, getting folks hooked on transit sooner, getting the park and ride in there sooner, I think would have been wise. And I think there's some things we can do with the developers to help with that. For example, Patricia, I was with Rod McPhail one time when he went and met with some developers and said, listen, even if you guys have to, through the CCCs or development fees, help us get the infrastructure sooner, even subsidize it sooner, you've got to get people in there and know it's coming so they don't buy the second car or they don't, you know, et cetera. So just adding my support to Tony's comments. Thirdly, the park and ride tender, I believe, has gone out, Patricia, and I'm just wondering if there's still, I'm glad that's gone out, and I'm excited about getting this built, and no, we never promised anybody a terminal there. I want a little bit more than phone booths with a heater, but we didn't promise anybody a terminal. But I'm just wondering, a group of residents and tenants and property owners did meet with you with some suggestions. And I'm just wondering if you're, getting back to both things like connecting trails and landscaping and that sort of thing. Are you circling back with them to know that their suggestions are being considered and perhaps part of the tender or subsequent tender?
Yes, absolutely we will. And actually, Erin Blay is in the meeting today as well. I'll just ask her to comment. I'm not sure, we might have already done that follow-up, but I'll ask Erin if she has anything to add.
All right, thank you. It's just we want we want to hear from people. We want to know that we're listened to, and if we can do what they're suggesting, that's fine. If we can't, then we need to explain why. But just so it doesn't just drop, because they did take the time to meet with us and meet with you and to make some good suggestions. So thank you, Patricia, and thank you, Chair.
Is Ms. Blay on the call, or was that something you were going to follow up with there, Ms. Hughes?
I'm here, Erin Blay, Supervisor of Service Design and Projects at Halifax Transit. Absolutely, Councillor, we will continue those discussions with the people who are interested enough to come and meet with us. Some of the feedback they gave us was very helpful, in particular in building some improved pedestrian connections. So that's something we're continuing to work on through the design process, and we'll reach out to them probably in the next couple of weeks as we refine that.
All right, that's great. Thank you, Erin. Welcome back, by the way. You're back.
Thank you.
Yeah,
That's
congratulations
right.
and welcome home.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we'll move on to Councillor Stoddard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have two questions or perhaps statements. In District 12, the Timberley area of District 12, there are two buses in a growing environment. And we have the 21 and the 23. The 21 now has residents having to transfer to go downtown, which adds time to their trip. We also have the 23, which takes almost 60 minutes to go to as far as the Veterans Hospital. I've experienced this myself last winter. If I go by car, it's 20 minutes. So it's almost triple the amount of time that you would spend on the bus. So that's one issue I have. The other thing is Timberley Parkway. Brunello is doing a lot of construction in that area. Currently, I've been aware of 333 new apartments that are going to be constructed in that area. So possibility of 666 persons that will be added to that area. There's also a Sobeys in that area now. And I think the possibility of having a bus on Timberley Parkway would make a big difference for the residents. I'm just wondering if there's any comment on those two issues. Please.
Over to staff.
Thanks. Yes, and we're hearing about these from passengers and residents as well. I hadn't heard about the long length of time to get the 123 in, and so that is intended to be an express route. I would say if there's routing changes we can make to make that move faster, we would be interested to do that. So we'll take that away and look and see what the timing is looking like. One of the best ways to improve that route may be to take advantage of any transit priority measures we can get in there over the future years. In terms of a new route to serve the new grocery facility and that part of the community, it really wasn't on our radar at all when we were doing the Moving Forward Together plan. So that's something we'd have to go back and take a look at. I would say some of it with the moving forward principle number 2 is about a transfer-based system, so it's unlikely we would restructure all of the routes and the 21 according to the principles we have in place now and the plan that we're following would continue to go to Laceway Terminal for a transfer. In terms of serving that new part of the community, we will certainly start looking at it now in preparation for the next plan review, but it would come after the plan is fully implemented. So I wouldn't see that coming before any of the other changes that are planned that we've been waiting for, but it's on our radar for future consideration for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steph. Thank you, Councillor Stoddart. I think we'll go back to Councillor Russell before we close. Councillor Russell.
Thank you very much. My last question was related to overloads. I'm looking at page 22 in the report, and that shows that by about a 25-30% margin, the number 8 had more overloads than the next closest route, the number 3. And I'm just wondering if that type of recognizing that it's short-term data, if that would have any impact on perhaps not the scheduling, but certainly the types of buses that are used. Would an articulated bus be used? I also recognize that this was months ago when capacity would have been drastically reduced, so the chance of an overload would have been significantly higher. Is that something that you would consider?
Yes, and I think the Route 8 under normal conditions, what's happening out there today with full service, we're not seeing very many overloads on that right now. That's not one that occasionally has overloads, but not all the time. So I think that this is really a circumstance of COVID and being at reduced frequency and passengers having less options at the time. I will look into that further to see if that was really a July-August problem until we went back to full service. My thinking is that it was. I would say generally the Route 8 being one of the 10 corridor routes in the Moving Forward Together plan, those are routes that we know are popular, that we know we could add a lot more frequency to, but it's all about balance and distributing resources and whatnot. So you know, it is a popular route. It always has been, but I do think that was more related to the service levels at the time, and I think now we only seldomly ever get an overload on the 8.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Russell. Thank you, staff. I don't have any questions to add. I think it's all been covered. So, and there's no motion for this quarterly presentation, so you're free to go. Thank you very much. We'll move on to 12.1.3 pedestrian push buttons. If someone would, I think we have a staff presentation on this. Is that correct?
I sure hope so.
This is Simon from the clerk's office reaching out. I don't believe that I've received a PowerPoint presentation myself, but staff may have one.
Well, hearing no voices clamoring to make a presentation, I'll ask one of the committee members to put the motion on the floor and we can start the discussion.
Okay, I can move that. Councillor Russell, it is recommended that the Transportation Standing Committee recommend that the Traffic Authority, 1, implement changes to the traffic signal programming at 93 signalized intersections to activate automatic display of the pedestrian walk signal without requiring pedestrians to use the push button for all crosswalks, 23 locations, or side street only crosswalks, 70 locations, as indicated in attachment 1 of this report. And 2, adjust activation times at 144 signalized intersections such that the push button will not be required to be pressed to activate the pedestrian signal between 6 a.m. and midnight 12 a.m., except to activate the audible tone where accessible pedestrian signals are also present. And 3, adjust the programming of the accessible pedestrian signals at all locations to remove the requirement for the push button to be held for 3 seconds to activate the audible tone and allow for single press activation. And I so move.
Second, Mancini.
Thank you.
By Councillor Russell, seconded by Councillor Mancini. Councillor Russell.
Thank you. I am generally in favor of item 3 on this motion, and that is about it. I would frankly like to see all of the push buttons removed, except for the accessible pedestrian signals. And I'm not sure if that would require a different motion, a change of motion. We have received some significant correspondence about this, and this is as individual committee members as well as through the committee at large. And so part of that, a lot of that related to the differences in the use and the placement and everything else related to the push button signals. And so I generally think that perhaps a better motion would be to remove all of the push buttons except for the ones that had the accessible pedestrian signals. I will leave this set of comments there and let's see how the conversation goes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I had the window minimized, so I can't see who else wants to speak. Hold on one second. We'll go to Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I am rather disappointed we don't have a presentation, and there was a lot of submissions. I found a lot of it was around questions that I would have potentially had the ability to discern where I stood on it with staff's input. So as it stands right now, and is there anything pressing time-wise that we need to move on this, or could we ask for a staff presentation and defer this to another meeting? I just want to know so I can better understand. I think a lot of the comments that were presented are fair to help me. I'd like to have that option.
That's a great option and a great idea. I guess I'll ask Brad Anguish if he enters the line of that for him.
Yes, staff would fully support that. I will apologize up front. We did not cover that at agenda meeting, therefore staff was not prepared today with a presentation. However, now understanding the potential magnitude of some of the concerns, let's please do that, because it is a difficult matter to understand. The current technology posture within push buttons within HRM is extremely difficult to understand. And so I would be very concerned about any broad swiping motions without appreciating the full consequences of that. So a long-winded statement to say yes, I would appreciate the chance to come back next meeting and give a robust presentation.
And you know, it's good of you to fall on your sword, but I am the chair and I didn't ask you to make a presentation because I didn't think of it because I'm out of practice. I haven't been chair of a standing committee for about 2.5 years. So my apologies to the committee for that. Lack of clarity with staff, it won't happen again. So Councillor Kent, would you like to make a motion? I guess it's hard to do this when I can't actually look at all your faces. If we make a motion to defer, we can still speak to the motion to defer. So if there's any pressing questions you have that you'd like the staff to cover in the presentation, you can mention them then. So I think we should proceed with the motion to defer and request a staff presentation. If you'd like to put that on the floor, Councillor Kent.
Thank you. Do we have to deal with that first motion or anything? Is this the right step?
We're deferring that motion to the next meeting pending a staff presentation.
The fact that it's on the floor now this addresses it.
It'll be put on the table and come back with the report.
It makes the motion on the floor the object that we are deferring. So.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you. I'll move that. I'd like to move that Standing Committee on Transportation defer this item number. Well, you know the item number to the next meeting, please, with a staff presentation. My, well, I'll leave it there.
Second by Councillor Mancini. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah. So some of the things that were highlighted in some of the submissions, and Councillor Russell noted them here, is I look forward to opportunities to hear about more why it's, for lack of a better word, cherry picked on some locations and not others. Is this meant to be sort of a pilot approach, or is this something that we will roll and phase in, or and what are the reasons behind that? The other layer is the heavy weight of the traffic merits versus the pedestrian and the cycling. I'd like some insight into that. The last thing is there was reference to the fact that there was no context from the moving forward together plan. I think that's the right plan. Maybe I'm wrong. Integrated mobility plan. Sorry. So some of those contexts are things that I'm going to want to hear about so that I can speak to it. Staff obviously have the submissions as well that were put forward. If they could look at sort of answering some of the concerns and questions, that'll help me and the larger picture, which is understand. Thank you.
Great questions, Councillor Kent. We'll move to Councillor Mancini on the deferral.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Councillor Kent, for the deferral. I was too surprised, no presentation. I would rather blame the chair versus staff on the no deferral presentation, so that's great. What I would ask of staff when they come back with a presentation, I realize we're following the guidelines that are in front of us for the province of Nova Scotia or HRM when it comes to these types of devices. I didn't see it in the report. You know, when we look at other jurisdictions, whether it's Canadian or American or Europe, you know, are there municipalities that don't have any of these push buttons? I'd like to get that kind of information so when staff can come back and because that helps us understand who are best practice when it comes to crosswalk safety, who are best practice when it comes to using these types of tools, and that would be helpful for me when we have that discussion. And so if staff could include information such as that if possible. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Mancini. We are joined for our sins by Councillor Cleary, who has a question. Councillor Cleary, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On one hand, I'm disappointed that it's not as a non-member of this committee anymore, and I miss you guys. I was hoping that I would only have to take this time out of my day to watch this one meeting and participate if possible. But now, of course, I'll have to come back for another meeting, but that's okay because I think it'll achieve a better outcome. I would like staff to address when they make their presentation. So these motions deal with, or these three parts to this one motion deal with pedestrian prioritization as it relates to pushing buttons. One of the things that you'll note in attachment 1 is in the list of intersections and where those buttons are, some of them are not just crosswalk or intersections with a crosswalk, they are half signals as well, which are treated differently, of course, as we know. And in fact, they already give prioritization to, except where the timing is concerned. So if you have half signals that are timed with lights upstream and downstream from that particular mid-block or intersection crosswalk treatment, you may be standing there for sometimes minutes waiting for a cross. And if staff could address not only the 23 that they're proposing to change to automatic, but also those half signals, which are not proposed to change because they don't need to, but can the timing be addressed? So I'll follow up with my colleagues on the committee and with Mr. Chair, Councillor Mason. Hopefully I can come to the next meeting, but if staff can address that, that would be great as well in the presentation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Cleary. Thank you for joining us. So there's no further speakers on the floor. So at this point, we can move to a vote on the motion to defer. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed to deferral? Motion carries. The motion is deferred to our next meeting. I'd like to thank Councillor Kent for that elegant solution. And I'd like to thank staff for being willing to bring that forward next meeting. So that concludes this section of our agenda. As 12.1.4, the Student Transit Pass Pilot Program has been deferred. So that puts us to reports from Active Transportation Advisory Committee. There are none. 12.3 is members of the Transportation Standing Committee motions. There are none. 13 motions, there are none, brings us to 14 in camera or in private. The motion is 14.1, approval of the in camera minutes, November 26, 2020. Would someone care to move that?
I move that we approve those minutes, those in-camera minutes. Mr. Chair, Mancini.
Moved by Councillor Mancini, seconded by?
I'll second that.
I think I heard Councillor Kent moments before Councillor Russell. And no further discussion as it's in camera. So if no one wishes to discuss it further, we can call the question.
Question?
Question's been called. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? In camera minutes are passed. So that brings us to 15.1, which I'm very excited to see, on-demand private accessible transportation service contract.
I can put that on the floor if you like, Mr. Chair.
That would be great. Thank you.
The Transportation Standing Committee recommend that Halifax Regional Council direct the Chief Administrative Officer include the procurement of an on-demand accessible transportation service as outlined in the January 7, 2021 report for consideration as part of the Halifax Transit 21-22 budget and business plan. So moved.
Moved by Councillor Mancini.
So is there any presentation?
I will second that to get it on the floor.
Councillor Russell. Thank you. Councillor Mancini.
Sorry, thank you, Councillor. Is there any presentation on this one either? Not that I was going to defer it. I'm just wondering, is there a presentation on this?
Through the chair, Dave Riggy, Executive Director, Halifax Transit. No, we don't have a presentation for this one today either. I guess continuing along that train.
So I do have a question, Mr. Chair. I do have a question.
I would suggest, if I may jump in, Councillor Mancini, that there should be a presentation at Regional Council.
So this today is just to send it to Regional Council. Is that correct?
Yes. It'll be discussed and debated further at Regional.
Okay, that's fine then. I'll wait for my questions at that point in time, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mancini. Does anybody have any further questions regarding this recommendation to Regional Council? Seeing none, we can move to a vote. All those in favor of item 15.1?
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. This brings us to 16, notice of motion. It says none, but I have one. Does anybody else have a notice of motion? No notices of motion. All right, so, and I'll send this to you, Simon. Just let me bring it up. At the next meeting of Transportation Standing Committee, I will move the following Transportation Standing Committee request a staff report regarding recommending establishing new standards for municipal utility and abutter work in the right of way to ensure accessibility and detectability for pedestrians shall be maintained at all times. All right. No other notices of motion. And Simon, to confirm, we had no one register for public participation today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No registered speakers for public participation.
Very good. So, well, unfortunate actually, but thank you for that clarification. Item 18, date of next meeting is February 25th, 2021 at 1 p.m. I will take a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Thank you. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, staff. Thank you, council.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well done. And thank you for taking the sword for staff.
Felt a little rusty myself, but we'll do better next time. Thank you. Great day, everybody.
You're back.